Okay, hi everyone, Daryl here. Okay, today we're going to touch on this topic called important compliance requirements for Singapore companies. Essentially, what today's video is about, if you have a Singapore registered company, you should be watching this video because these are the things that you should know or you should need to know if you are running a Singapore company, especially if you are a director of the company. Okay, so what you need to know, right, is that the officers, namely the director, is responsible for the day-to-day running of the company. What that means is that even though as a director you engage, like let's say for myself, you engage me as your company secretary, then if I sit on your in your company as the company secretary and something doesn't go right, essentially what happens is that the directors are still responsible for the day-to-day running of the company. Okay, so the directors in essence are answerable if let's say the company gets into a lawsuit. The director is supposed to be acting on behalf of the company. Okay, and so there are certain director duties, right, which you must discharge properly. And if you don't discharge them properly, right, there's actually sections in the Companies Act which will the director can be maybe taken to task or something like that. So if the directors, right, the directors can be disqualified from being a director if he or she has been convicted of 3 or more filing related offences under the Companies Act within a period of 5 years. So this is under section 155 of the Companies Act. So some clients, right, they actually come to us and say that, oh, I don't know anything. Okay, but if you're a director of a company, right, you should understand what are the essential things that you will need to know and you will need to be able to discharge your duty as a director properly. If not, right, then you're not allowed to be a director at all. So you can't go to the regulator, or you can't if the company is taken to task, the excuse that I don't know what I'm supposed to do as a director, right, that wouldn't really be a valid excuse. Okay, so if you have 3 or more high court orders made against him as a director or compelling compliance with the relevant requirements of the Act within a period of 5 years, also Section 155 of the Companies Act. Um, yeah, so this is another requirement for disqualification, or this is another thing that can get you disqualified as a director. Or you have 3 or more of his or her company struck off the register by ACRA under Section 344 within a period of 5 years. So this 5 year period, right, will commence after the date on which the third company is struck off. Okay, so if let's say your company doesn't do proper annual return filing, doesn't do all the statutory requirements, then the registrar deems that I don't think this company is operating well, or for whatever reason they strike it off, and you happen to be a director of that company. Okay, so if you have 3 or more of your companies being struck off, right, within a period of 5 years, then after that you will be disqualified as a director. So it's important to take note now, once you're disqualified as a director, you can't be a director of a Singapore company. Okay, and next we talk about appointment of company director. So as a mandatory requirement, right, every company needs to appoint at least one resident director. So what a resident director is, right, it doesn't mean that the resident director has to be a Singapore citizen. It can be a Singapore citizen, but if the citizen is not residing in Singapore, that means this citizen is maybe residing in Australia. That doesn't qualify as a resident director. So can a foreigner be a resident director? Yes, the foreigner can be a resident director if the foreigner has applied for a valid work pass, like for example an employment pass to work as a director of this company. Then that foreigner can be a resident director. So some companies in Singapore, they don't have any Singaporeans at all. So the shareholders are foreigners and the directors are also foreigners. So how do the foreign directors uh, qualify as this resident director? They actually apply for an employment pass, and this employment pass allows them to work as a director of this Singapore registered company. So the director will need to make a declaration to state that he or she is not an undischarged bankrupt and is not disqualified from being a director of a Singapore company. So there's actually this thing called Form 45. So actually you come to us to incorporate a company, or a director comes in, we will get the director to fill up this declaration form to declare that that individual is not undischarged, bankrupt, that that individual is not disqualified from being a director of a Singapore company. So we'll get the director to make this declaration. So the next thing to take note, right, is a registered address. So every company, right, will need a registered local address. So if let's say you are a foreigner, then you want to set up a Singapore registered company, you can't use your address in maybe Dubai or in London to fulfill this criteria. So this criteria has to be a local address. This address must be open and accessible to public during normal office hours. It should be a place where the registers of the company are kept, and registers are something that I will talk on further down the road in this video. So you can use a registered office service. That means that if you don't actually have a physical office, or if let's say you have a physical office, like for example I have clients that they have warehouses, but because their warehouses are purely operational, they don't want maybe like they want somebody like our company to take care of all their letters and correspondences with the government and whatnot, right? Then they will still keep the company's address under our registered address. So my office is the registered address for many of my clients, and that constitutes as a registered office service. Okay, so if you want to use a home address, like for example, if you're staying in a housing development board flat, or if you're staying in a private condominium or a landed property, and you want to use that as a home address, it must comply the requirements, and you need to register the relevant authorities. So like for example, if you have a HDB flat, then you want to register the company to the HDB flat, you have to go to HDB's website. They will actually have a whole list of trades which are permissible for this home office scheme. Then you will have to register with HDB saying that I'm conducting my day-to-day running of my business in my home office, and then you can use your registered address while registering for the company. So next up, right, is the appointment of a company secretary. So the company will need to appoint a qualified company secretary within 6 months of incorporation. So the post of company secretary also cannot be left vacant for more than 6 months, and then there are certain requirements that the company secretary should know, and then the company secretary will complete this form 45B, which is another declaration to the company secretary. So essentially, when the clients appoint us as the corporate service provider, right, then typically we will, like, let's say if my client appoints me, then typically I'll put myself and perhaps my other colleague as post as company secretaries for the company. So I do actually in recent practices, right, because uh, just so that there's always somebody to respond on behalf of the company, so I put myself and my other colleague as the registered company secretary. Okay, so there are certain requirements for certain types of companies. Like for example, if the company is a public company, then only certain people with certain experiences can actually sit on the post of the company secretary. Okay, next is the appointment of company auditor. So the company will need to appoint an auditor within 6 months from date of incorporation. Okay, however, right, there are many companies that qualify for audit exemption. So if you don't have an auditor, and then you've been surviving for so long, and then I'm your company secretary, not to worry. So I always I will always run through and see whether you all qualify for exemption. Then if you qualify for exemption, then don't need to incur any further cost of getting a company auditor to sit in the post as of the company auditor, because you qualify for the exemption. So you need to meet at least 2 of the following 3 conditions. So if your total annual revenue of the company doesn't exceed Singapore dollars 10 million, total assets do not exceed Singapore dollars 10 million, and does not have more than 50 employees. So these 3 conditions, right, you fulfill 2, the company fulfills 2, then you qualify for audit exemption, which means that you do not have to hire an auditor. Okay, so all public companies need to hire an auditor. Okay, so if you're a public company limited by guarantee, which is like a non-profit organization, or you're a typical public company, you will definitely need an auditor. Okay, so if you're a private company and you have 2 out of 3 of these conditions, then you qualify for an exemption from needing to engage a company auditor to be to sit as a company auditor in the company. Okay, so next up, right, we go to the like day-to-day running. So those are the mandatory requirements when you set up the company. So next, right, we move on to accounting records. So a lot of people they say, oh, my business very small, so I don't want to keep proper accounting records. All this cannot okay. So if you want to start up a company, right, you have to take into account accounting records. So I actually tell people who come to us and say that I don't want to set up I don't need to do accounting because my business not very big. Every year only make a few tens of thousands of dollars, but that doesn't mean that you do not need to keep accounting records. All companies need to keep proper accounting records because you will need to file your taxes. You need to prepare your financial statements for AGM. Yeah, in certain scenarios you will need to prepare XBRL, which is extensible business reporting language. That means the financial statements has to be in a certain format. You can actually do it in-house or outsource. So if let's say you are familiar with doing accounts, you can actually use cloud accounting software. We encourage our clients to use things like Xero or QuickBooks. Then you can actually do it in-house, or you can outsource it. So you can outsource it to practices like ours. So we will actually take on board the responsibility of updating. So we have clients that send us receipts on a day-to-day. Then after that we update. Then we also have clients that they compile their receipts for the whole year. Then at the end of the year they pass everything to us. Then we put everything together for them. So we have many solutions that are out there. If let's say your business is very significant, very substantial, then what you would require is maybe in-house bookkeeper. So you can actually get somebody to come in to sit as an accountant in your office, and then every day just resolve your accounting matters. Okay, so accounting records are very important, and to be frank, I think that there are a lot of companies that overlook this key element. Okay, so company stamp and company letterhead. So all company documents should have the company name and registration number. So if let's say for me, if let's say I come out with a director's resolution for your company, then you would notice that your company name and your company UA number is on top of the director's resolution, because this is a company document. It should have your company name and registration number. Okay, so you can print documents on company letterhead. So if you send out a memo, it should be on company letterhead, which bears the company name and registration number, the UA number. But if you do not bear the company letterhead, what you will need to do is you will need to use a company stamp to affix these details. So for example, if your company signs a contract with perhaps Singtel, and Singtel is there to maybe provide internet services to your office, then they would require a company stamp. Why is that so? Because the document is actually prepared by Singtel. So Singtel normally logically would not have your company name and registration number on the document. So what you will need to do, right, is that you will need to use a company stamp to stamp on the document, and then you affix the required information, which is your company name and registration number there. So it's essential that you should have at least a company stamp. For our clients, what a lot of our clients do is that they leave the company stamp with the corporate secretary. Then whenever somebody needs a document to be stamped, right, they just tell us to settle it, then we will just settle it for them. So next up is company seal. So all deeds should have a seal affixed. So for what example of a document that requires a seal to be affixed would be like a share certificate. So a share certificate, typically you can see like a seal that is affixed on the share certificate. So sometimes it's wax, then after that they use a seal to press. If not, then it would be like maybe a gold sticker or something like that with the seal embossing onto the sticker. Then after the sticker is pasted on the certificate. So there are provisions to do away the seal. So essentially, if let's say you don't want to go and create a seal, which in our opinion is better for us also. So we actually encourage clients, don't waste money. You don't actually need a seal, because if you get one director and a secretary to sign, right, essentially that replaces a seal already. So if you can get officers to sign on the document, right, and that the signatures which are affixed replaces the requirement for a seal. So this is actually a provision that is inside the statute. So next, right, these are statutory requirements which need to be maintained. So like there's a maintenance of register of controllers. So when we talk about registers, for those who are familiar with things like book in book out, which means that when you go to a certain place, for those who have gone through national service and they are serving in the army or the military, then when you come into camp, you would have to sign in, you have to write what time you came in, and then when you left, you will have to write when you went out. So for some workplaces also the same thing. It's like punching in and punching out a time, and this maintenance of register of controllers is the same. So whenever you see the word register, you are supposed to have a record of when a certain person came in and a certain person came out of a certain position. So for maintenance of register of controllers, from 31st of March 2017, all companies are required to maintain a hard copy of digital register of controllers. So what a controller is, right? In a nutshell, but I think it is too simplistic to say that. Essentially, a controller is somebody who has 25 more than 25% voting rights of the company. But why is that so, right? I have another video which is inside the YouTube channel as well. You should go and source, or you can read my blog articles on what is a controller. So this register of controllers, right, is actually there to to put uh, to put in place so that we know who are the controllers of the company. Okay, so this register must be accessible during office hours, which means that it can be a rudimentary document, such that you take pen and ruler, and then you put a jotter book, and then you have this register. But when did this person enter into the company as a controller, when did he leave as a controller, all these things need to be inside this register. Okay, but typically for us, of course, we put it in we print out proper register format, and we fill it up, and then we keep it in the company file. So for our clients, right, what we do is that there's always a company file which is kept in the cabinet in our office. Then if they want to inspect the registers themselves, then they can just come down to our office. So next, right, would be maintenance of public register of members for foreign companies. So all foreign companies are required to maintain a public register of members within 30 days after it's registered. So register of members, right, in layman term would be shareholders. Okay, so some in some aspect, like for example, companies that are not limited by shares, they call it members. But in general, right, when you see members, they are essentially shareholders. For a company limited by shares, if you see the word members, is synonymous with shareholders. So members and shareholders are the same. You can use them interchangeably. So essentially, this is a maintenance of public register of shareholders for foreign companies. Okay, so for all foreign companies are required to maintain this register 30 days after it's registered, which means that after you register, right, you have to have this register of members, right, or register of shareholders inside the company file. Okay, no foreign companies are exempted. So some companies, they say, hey, so troublesome, can I don't have this register, can you check whether I'm exempted? Don't have. There's no foreign company that is registered. Okay, so the register can be hard copy or in electronic format. This is something that I think I forgot to put into the maintenance of register of controllers as well. So the register can be soft copy, it can be in an Excel format, but it has to be there. Okay, so you have to be able to show the registrar or whoever that is looking through the register, right, when this person came in as a member, when did this person leave as a member, when did this person sell certain shares to another person. These are the registers, or these are the information that are supposed to be inside this register of members. So next up, right, is application for GST, or goods and services tax. It's mandatory if your projected or annual revenue of the Singapore company exceeds 1 million. The company will have to apply for GST registration at IRAS. Of course, if let's say you decided that my company would like to do voluntary GST registration, there are reasons why some companies would want to do that. Then of course the application will be there. But this for this requirement, right, if your annual revenue exceeds 1 million, then you definitely have to register GST with IRAS. Okay, so if there are any changes to company particulars, right, you need to file these changes with ACRA within the allotted time frame. Okay, so there are penalties for non-compliance, and normally my clients ask me what are the time frames. So there are different time frames for different changes. So normally I just tell them, I just remember everything is 7 days or 14 days. You see, so I will tell them that if there are any changes, please inform us within a week, and then we'll make the changes in ACRA. So if you don't comply, then typically there will be penalties. Okay, so all companies are required to do their annual returns, file the annual returns with ACRA. The time frame to do this is 1 month after the AGM. Why is that? Why do I not include the AGM? Is because there are provisions in the Companies Act that you can dispense the AGM, but the AGM is supposed to be held 6 months after the closure of the financial year. Then after the AGM, right, you can do your annual return filing within 1 month after the AGM. So if you do let's say your financial year closes on 31st December, then your AGM will be 30th of June, the latest. So if let's say you really hold it on 30th of June, then 1 month from then would be end of July, right? By end of July, you need to file these annual returns. So during the annual return filing, right, what we will do is that we will actually submit the information up to ACRA as to when the AGM was held, and then if there are any other declarations which are required, right, then we would declare accordingly in the AGM, in the annual return, sorry. Yeah, so it is here that we also upload the financial statements for our clients. Okay, so this annual return filing, right, is very important. So this is a statutory requirement. Every year, right, need to go and do annual return filing, because every year you hold your AGM. Okay, so next up, right, this annual return filing is statutory requirement by ACRA, okay, which is the governing body for companies. Okay, then the next one, right, will be IRAS, which is the income tax department. Okay, so there's this thing called estimated chargeable income. So all companies are required to file the ECI within 3 months after the end of this financial year. So what this does is that you put together your finances, then after you say, oh, this the estimated chargeable income, then they will calculate, then you will need to make this type of payment for corporate taxes. Then you can set up recurrent payment on a monthly payment for your company. So if you do ECI, then you can put your payments in installments. But if you that's the benefit for ECI. So all companies, you are required to file your ECI within 3 months of the end of this financial year. Then of course we come on to corporate tax filing, which means that companies will have to declare their corporate taxes to IRAS. So a lot of people, they ask me, what's the difference between ECI and then corporate tax filing? So ECI is you tell IRAS, okay, so when I put together everything, right, this is the amount of chargeable income which I believe the company made. And then after that, corporate tax filing is like maybe like the final amount. So if there's any discrepancy from the ECI to the corporate tax filing, right, then if you paid too much, IRAS will refund the company. If the company paid too little, then IRAS will claim back the difference from the company. So all companies are required to file their corporate tax returns. And how you calculate this is that if let's say year of assessment 2022, which is this year, the deadline, right, is I think it should be 30th of November already. Okay, so the deadline to e-file last time was 15. I think now should be 30th of November. So I just change it here. Okay, so the deadline to e-file, right, is on 30th of November, which means that you will be filing for the previous year. So any financial year that closed in 2021, then that will be filed on by 30th of November of this year. Okay, so like for example, if your company was incorporated in 2021, then after you haven't even closed the financial year, you don't need to file corporate tax filing, because you haven't your year assessment will be the year after you close your financial year. So typically financial year is 1 year, right? So if you incorporated your company in 2021, then you would close your first financial year in 2022, and your first corporate tax filing will be in 2023. But don't forget, if you close your financial year in 2022, within 3 months you must still do your ECI. It's just that the final corporate tax filing is the subsequent year. Okay, so there are always future changes, and I included this because earlier this year, Parliament they passed the Corporate Registers Miscellaneous Amendments Act, which amends the Companies Act, and it also amends the LLP Act. But since we're talking about companies, we just follow suit, and then talk about companies. Okay, so earlier this year, January 10th, 2022, this was passed. What does this set up to do? Okay, so just now I talked about registers. So there are the changes that are coming are that the register of nominee shareholders and the nominators will have to be prepared as well. So the registers have to be updated within 7 days of being informed by the nominee. So if let's say like nominee shareholder means what? Means if let's say I'm the nominator, I say that for certain reason I don't want to hold shares in this company, so therefore I declare that I get maybe my friend to be the nominee shareholder, so he will hold the shares of a certain company on my behalf, and then sort of act in my instruction. So obviously you cannot vote. I cannot vote if I'm not holding shares, right, of a certain company at the AGM. But if somebody else is, then that person will be voting on behalf of how me as the nominator, because I nominated somebody to become the nominee shareholder, so I'm the nominator. That nominator would most probably have influence over the nominee shareholder, influencing him how to vote at annual general meetings, and then exercising his power as the nominator behind the nominee shareholder. So current regulations do not require nominators to be identified, which means that current regulations, some of the shareholders, which are shareholders of Singapore companies, behind them there is a nominator, but there isn't any requirement as of today to actually name these people. But what we actually are going to have is that there's going to be this register, and it's going to be non-public. Okay, so what this means is that if you go onto the business profile, BizFile, to go and do a search, right, most probably I mean not so most probably you will not be able to see the nominator. You can only see the shareholder. There's no such thing as nominee shareholder inside the business profile as well. But if there are instances whereby something goes wrong, and then for whatever reason, right, then after that they got to pull out the non-public register of nominee shareholders and their nominators. Then it will most probably be the registrar or maybe some law enforcement agency which is pulling this out. So you can see where this is going. So as we are trying to go in line with international standards to prevent maybe like anti-money laundering, or prevent financing of terrorist activities. So these are things that are coming on board, and you as a director of a Singapore registered company, you are not allowed to say that oh, actually I'm a director but I put name only. Okay, that doesn't hold any weight. If you are a director of a Singapore registered company, right, you need to know your responsibilities. Okay, so if you have any queries, what you can do, right, with regards to registering a company or running a company, or if you would like to register for any of our services, or you want to engage us to do your corporate secretarial work, then you can you can email us at info@singaporesecretaryservices.com, or you can call, SMS, or WhatsApp this number. Okay, so that's all from me, and we will see you at the next video.